Welcome to episode 17 of the Ape and Bird NFT show, and we have the returning Ape. Steve, welcome back to the show. I'm glad to see you doing it all by myself last week. I don't know if we lost all of our audience, but great to see you fired back up.
I'm alive. You did a great job last week. I enjoyed watching it. I was like, you don't need me at all.
I've got to say I had to do a little bit of additional research because there are some topics when we tic-tac during the week of what we're going to speak on that one of us might go a little bit more heavier on the research on a topic. So I had to spend a little bit of time on late Friday or Thursday whenever I recorded that. But it was an interesting experience. I think I probably waffled on a little bit too much about Tom Bilyeu. I sort of caught myself in a bit of a moment where I've thought, shit, I've been speaking about Tom Bilyeu for about 10 minutes. So
I can't believe you do research. Well done, you. I just jump on and we talk.
So no, look, a very interesting experience, but hopefully one that we don't have to go through too often.
Yes, hopefully this, whatever it is, all this hard work that I'm doing that's making me run down, I'll find some time to relax soon. I do have a holiday planned in November for 10 days. So maybe from December and 2023 onwards, we'll be back to full speed.
We hope so, but geez, we say that as NFT nuts all the time. Just when we get to this moment in time, we'll have a break. Just when this happens, we'll have a break. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I do with NFTeams as well. I'm like, I've just got to reach this milestone and then I'll take a break. And then it's like, no, the next thing needs to be done. And then the next thing. The joys of this space, it's crazy.
Well, we are going to ask you a little bit about NFTeams. I have seen a number of announcements that you've posted in the last sort of week or so. So it seems like there's plenty happening in your world, in your project world. So we will get to that today. But I think we were going to start off with Future Proof. We had that a couple of days ago. I think it happened overnight leading into Wednesday. I did not watch it live. I was traveling a little bit this week. I've actually struggled to get through all of it. I've been trying to watch it in bits and pieces. I believe you've seen it, Steve. I've certainly got 80% of the content under the belt. So let's have a chat about what were sort of some of the key takeaways from your perspective with this big Future Proof announcement.
Yeah, so what I saw was there's a few things going on. Kevin did announce that they've raised $50 million in funding. So I can't even work out how much funding they've got because the 2.5 ETH initial drop plus all the royalties, I'm guessing they're sitting on over $100 million. I think he mentioned there was 30 employees now full-time. And then they were talking about High-Rise, what it is. The new birds, what were they? Mythics or Mystics
yep.
or Mythics? How there's a burn feature with those creatures. What are they called again?
Oddities, your favorite.
Oddities. And yeah, just how the team's growing, what they're looking to build. And it was interesting. I would like to get your thoughts on it because you are in that ecosystem. One of the interesting things was playing with the mint and how there's only going to be 50 of these mythics dropped every day. So a max of 50.
25 I've got on a slide here.
Yeah, if you watch it till the end, they actually talk about it's 25 for nested moonbirds.
Sure.
And there's 25 that can be burned of the oddities each day as well. So a total of 50. But that doesn't mean all 25 oddities are going to be burnt every single day. But yeah, let's hear how you felt about it as you're part of this whole ecosystem. And then I'll come back and give you my 2 cents.
Absolutely. So again, I have not watched to the end. I think I'm up to about the 50-minute mark when Harry from Divergence is talking about bits and pieces of Project High-Rise. I've got to say, again, I've been quite distracted this week with other sort of things in my life. So trying to catch up on all of these announcements and just make sense of them has been difficult this week. The sentiment I sort of saw, and I spoke to a few of my fellow Moonbird holders and Proof Collective members, was it was generally a positive sentiment announcement or event. We did see Moonbirds run up, I think, to maybe around 15, 16, 17 ETH, and then they sort of dropped to about 13, I think, but then they're sort of just incrementally jumping back up. I think we spoke about that a few weeks ago, Steve, that it appears in this market that it's almost like whatever you do, whether you're doodles and you say nothing, you're going to get hammered. And if you actually deliver on something or make an announcement or something, it's you're going to get hammered as well. So it's a very, very difficult market.
Doodles not having a tweet in over a month is crazy. But I also saw Kevin did tweet when a big DAO or something started dumping.
Yep.
So it was quite strange to see Kevin talking about floors and dumping as well.
Yeah. But back to my key takeaways, at least for the parts of the video recording that I've watched. As a Proof Collective member, I'm pretty excited that Sam, aka Punk, I'm going to get the number wrong, but you're talking about NFT statistics.
What is it? Statistics. Yeah.
Yeah. So we actually saw NFT statistics on Twitter doxed. Real name was Sam, talking about more in-depth research reports and daily reports, as well as sort of overarching. Like, we've had a couple of deep dives around like music NFTs, which are obviously still very, very new and nascent industry. There's been actually a research report on your favorite chain being Solana, Steve. But ultimately, I think the Proof Collective is excited by having Sam on board. So believe it's going to be turning into sort of a daily newsletter for collective members, and then sort of a weekly report on trends and themes that are sort of coming out of different pockets of the NFT land. So even when we think about things like digital fashion and, as I mentioned, music NFTs, so it's not just going to be sort of on the generative art side, which obviously is sort of a backbone to the Proof system. So I'm excited personally by that. We also saw the announcement that there's going to be more, not necessarily Grails. I think they're still sticking to having 3 Grails per year, but there's going to be more types of dynamics and artist collaborations, and that's going to be from some existing artists that are somewhat household names, at least for us in the NFT community, but then also some new artists that are coming into the fold. So they're launching sort of like a Genesis, I suppose, sub-brand, if you like, where they'll provide a platform for some new artists to emerge. So from that perspective, I think that's good with Proof. The Moonbirds Mythics is definitely an interesting dynamic. I believe Kevin said they're probably not going to be launching those until the start of next year, or maybe Q1 next year. That one's an interesting one for me. I mean, this has been a debate, especially in the bear market, right? And I think even NFT Statistics, before Sam was appointed to Proof in that role, was doing a lot of charts and data mapping, etc., around, whether it's collections like World of Women that dropped a 20K subsequent project called Galaxy, World of Women Galaxy, whether it was Doodles, whether it was whatever project we've seen sort of follow that 10K into 20K expansion drop. So for me, it's interesting that we've had oddities. There was some confusion around oddities of like what they are. I think if you're a Proof team member, you're sitting there going, well, we just wanted to give our holders a nice little surprise and delight after 30 days, and Gremplin agreed to do something. And then obviously the speculation got out of hand with the pre-reveal being 60 days. And then you're sort of left with some unhappy people around the oddities and how the communication was there. So then to turn around and do another 20K drop, I don't know. Like, I'm still very firmly believe Kevin, Justin, and the team have a method to their madness. But if you look at the data with all follow-up 20K drops outside of Mutant Apes, I'm not sure there's a compelling reason to do one in terms of what it's going to potentially do to the initial 10K collection. So that's sort of the big unknown for me. Now, is there a team that I would back that hopefully could navigate this? And is the drop dynamics of this Moonbird Mythics being what we just spoke about, 50 a day, essentially drip feeding them into the world, and how that price fluctuates? You think about what nouns do and little nouns, where it's one a day with nouns and little nouns once every 15 minutes. It's going to be fun. I can say that. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I think I read something that it would take, depending on the number of oddities being burnt, to redeem a Moonbird Mythics, which they sort of announced in the preview a few weeks ago, that there'd be a burn mechanic for oddities for those that are unhappy with their oddities, so they can get one of these new Moonbirds Mythics. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens to that initial collection, and a lot of this stuff is happening very quickly. Having said that, if Moonbirds Mythics are coming out in Q1 2023, that would be roughly the same time frame, given that Moonbirds launched mid-April 2022 as, the Bored Apes in, what was that? Well, no, actually, that would be a bit longer. We went from Bored Apes to Mutant Apes in, what, a 4 to 5 month period?
Yeah, I think it was like 6 months later, but it was a very different time.
It was.
Where anything would mint out. But yeah, my concern is when you dilute your whole brand with, and 20,000 is a lot, fair enough, we're going to have just 50 a day. But the market has already sort of spoken where these are going to be priced, because oddities are about 1.5 ETH at the moment. I can see them maybe going down a little bit. We usually see, I think the standard is about 1/5 the price of the main project. So if Moonbirds are, say, 15 ETH now, 3 ETH seems to be a fair in this thing price. So 1.5 might be a bargain. Kevin or Justin also mentioned that unlike oddities, each mythic could be rare, so it does not link to your Moonbird or the oddity. So it's a proper free roll. The other thing is the Proof Collective isn't actually making money off of this apart from secondary royalties. So it's a free drop in essence, apart from burn-in oddities. So it's an interesting one, but like you said, we've seen so many projects drop a second collection. Look, I'm doing it in probably 4 to 5 months to grow everything as well. But it's a damn hard time to try to drop a 10K collection, and then a 20K collection. It's going to be interesting to watch.
Absolutely. I think it's an important point too, what you said around, I'm about to sneeze here, so apologies. I'll have to mute myself in a second. But it's important that I think in terms of the other collections we did speak about, often this has been the way to fundraise for projects as well, or to give an additional cash injection, which is obviously fair enough, particularly when you look at Bored Apes. Right, initially they minted out at what, 0.08 ETH, 0.08 I should say.
Maybe 2 or 3 million, or maybe $4 million in funding to start.
Yeah, and they really needed that mutant ape drop to actually get some money in the kitty. So, look, it's going to be a fascinating one to see. I think it is going to add some different dynamics, given that they're going to drip feed through, and it might take up to 2.5 years to actually mint out that collection. So maybe that dynamic actually changes some of the things we've spoke about, where you're not just throwing it all to the wall at once. But who knows? And we should also preface too that a lot of this is market, macro market driven as well. I'm sure if we were still in that type of run up as we saw last year,
you would have released them all at once at a price.
Yeah. So,
but it's also a good marketing play having only 50 a day, as you will be able to look at each sort of new mythic, and people will be excited to see all the new traits. They also mentioned, and this is a really good thing, someone minting on day one won't have to wait until the end to know how rare theirs is. So the metadata will sort of already be up and known. But yeah, so it's going to be interesting, but it gives them the chance to do marketing for at least the first month or two as all these new cool designs are coming out. People will be excited. But what happens after 1,000, 2,000 have been minted and most of the rarities are out there? I can actually see a side project from some random group grabbing all the traits and completing the 20,000 before the real ones get done. So, yeah, always interesting times in NFTs. What did you think of the High Rise project?
Yeah, so that's the sort of part that I haven't really seen a lot on. I mentioned before that I was watching Harry explain some of it, and I had heard Kevin talk about it on the preview town hall Discord about a week or two ago. It does seem like it's going to start off as a very sort of art place to sort of, well, when I say art place, a place to sort of appreciate some of the art, have commentary over it, check who the sort of top collectors of certain pieces are, etc. I think Harry was describing it as a little bit of a digital city square in terms of what High Rise will be. It'll be a destination, a token-gated community for the proof ecosystem, in terms of that's where you'll go to get, you know, those research reports I was talking about. If you're a Proof Collective member, that's where you'll go to find sort of announcements and things like that. But I haven't dug into it enough, Steve. Honestly, I would love to hear what your thoughts were, because I know you said you watched the end of the video.
Yeah, this one was puzzling. I think we talked ages ago, back on one of the earlier episodes, how Kevin had been talking about High Rise being a Discord replacement. I think there was talk that the token, and that was mentioned at the end of the thing, would link to High Rise in a way. And yeah, High Rise was going to be sort of this project that would bring in funding and go back to the community and give them a lot of utility. To me, it looked like they're building the wiki of NFT art. And if you know Wikipedia, they struggle. They're one of the most visited websites in the world, but they struggle with funding every single year. So this seems like more of a money sink than a profit center. The other thing, like you mentioned, if it's token gated, that's crazy to me as well, because let's say I don't own any of the tokens in the Moonbirds or the Proof Collective. I can't come and use the site. If it's only for 10,000 or 20,000 people, I don't know. I think this whole space is about building for everybody, decentralized, equal access to information. So it's going to be interesting. I assume Kevin has a plan where anyone can come and get the basics. Then the token gated stuff will be in-depth reports, some community stuff, tagging, and so on. But yeah, it threw me, really. So we'll just have to wait and see when V1 launches and actually what's really part of everything.
Yeah, definitely interesting. What did you think about the DAO announcement, in terms of there's going to be, you know, I can't remember if it was the full amount of secondary sales of Moonbirds or a percentage was going to ongoing to the DAO, and the DAO will, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I heard Justin in passing say something along the lines of the DAO will be deciding which projects that are put forward that will actually be able to use the Moonbirds trademark. We know Moonbirds from an art perspective is CCO now, but in terms of actually using the trademark, so if you're, you know, spinning up whatever brand you are or whatever project you're trying to spin up, whether that's a digital project or a digital product, I should say, or a physical product, or somewhere in between with a crossover, what did you think of that aspect?
Yeah, I believe he said it was a percentage of royalties.
Right.
So I'm going to guess 50% is going to go to the DAO. We've seen a lot of DAOs. I think we're in the very early stages of DAOs, and we don't understand how to run one properly. So it's a tough one. Normally, you want the people at the top that know the area well, maybe IP lawyers, maybe the people in the entertainment industry or whatever, to decide on these sort of things. It's great to say, and again, the whole decentralized thing, that we give everyone a vote, but when you sort of just like allow the crowd to decide, they don't always make the best decisions. So... and I keep going back to, I've repeated myself 100 times. It's a test. Wait, see how it goes. We've seen very similar issues with the 8 DAO. A lot of infighting, a lot of weird ones getting up the vote, and it seems to be more of a popularity contest at the moment. So it's like, oh, this person put this one up for a vote. He's very popular in the community. That gets voted yes. So it's a tough one. I don't think we're ready for DAOs, to be honest. There needs to be better infrastructure, a better understanding of how it should run. But wait and see. Wait and see.
Yeah, I agree with you on the sort of thoughts around DAOs, and I've always sort of believed that, you know, trying to make decisions in a very collaborative manner often is, it sounds nice and warm and fuzzy, but it often...
You need a leader. You need a final vote that says, this is what we're doing. Fair enough, take a lot of the information in, but you need someone, because at the end of the day, you need someone who's going to do the work. Running NFTeams, we have people coming up with great ideas. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Get started on it for us. That'll take 4 employees, $250,000 and 6 months. And so it's great to have these ideas, but you do need the person that's going to be like, all right, this one's important. This one will move the needle. So that moves to the top. We can put our resources there. So I think what Kevin and Justin said in that proof talk was that they're really going to try to let the community build. They were talking about having the community do the work as well. And really, in these sort of environments with DAOs, with open source, that's what you need. We saw it with the Bored Apes. The Bored Ape founders did very little the first year. They dropped the dogs, they dropped the mutants, but that was pretty much it. Everything that you saw on social media were people like me hiring out 3D designers, graphic designers, and getting stuff done around the apes that we loved. So I would say 95% of the growth was due to the community, just creating cool stuff, chatting, and having fun. So
Jenkins.
That's Jenkins. Yeah, exactly. There are a lot of projects being built from ape holders. But yeah, it really does take a community to build these projects.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I was about to say, you know, the DAO, I have very similar thoughts about DAOs as you do, but I also think that it is probably good to put a structure in place. Like we sort of saw it organically from the Bored Ape community, like you just referenced there with yourself, Jenkins, all these other great projects and side projects and derivatives and everything like that we saw spun up, Bored and Hungry, you know, the restaurant, all that type of stuff. And it sort of just seemed like it was the right moment in time. There was a lot of obviously FUD against Lava Labs and how CryptoPunk holders owned a phenomenal asset, but they weren't allowed to do anything with it. And I think that even propelled the ape community to say, well, here's our competitive edge too, because we can do whatever the hell we want and let's keep growing this brand. And Kevin does keep repeating that, you know, we don't want to be a copy pasta project. We want to sort of map our own way. So I think in a way, this is probably his sort of thought process around, well, you know, it happened for the apes almost organically in that moment of time, but let's empower the Moonbirds community to do it a different way, but we need some structure of what that looks like, because we can't be answering, you know, 10,000 DMs on a daily basis by any old person that says, you know, I want to do a Moonbird coffee mug, you know, line or whatever. So, you know, I'm excited to see where this experiment, we always use the word experiment, goes. But, you know, it's an interesting moment in time, isn't it, where we're in this bear market and you look at it and you go, well, a sizable chunk of my net worth might be tied up in these internet pitches, and you know, you're almost saying like, I hope all these other holders do good things with the brand. So it's definitely an interesting one. But I mean, you know, it in a way it's sort of similar parallels, isn't it, when you're investing in stocks and stuff like that, to say that you know, well, we hope that company X, Y, or Z, you know, the CEOs are, you know, switched on and doing the right things with their staff.
Yeah, there is a slight difference with stocks and NFT projects, because it would be lovely to own a part of the proof company that just raised 50 million at a who knows valuation. So yeah, there is a bit of crossover there. The last thing they mentioned, Kevin hinted at it, but said we can't talk too much, was their token. you didn't get to the end, but what do you assume the token's going to do? Kevin said it's going to be very different, but for the life of me, I can't envision what the token will allow that's different than what we've already seen in the marketplace.
So a couple of thoughts. I just want to read out. I've just got this tweet from Benny, that from Proof that does all the tweet threads. And this, I think, is verbatim from Kevin, but it says, the world doesn't need another token for speculation. When we do something, it should be uniquely our own, with real utility, something that will push what's possible in new and exciting directions. Now, obviously, a pretty hype statement, but I actually listened to Kevin on a podcast with your man, Jason Calacanis from JCal, from, I think it was in February or March 2021. So Kevin was certainly, he hadn't launched Modern Finance yet, but it was on This Week in Startups podcast. And It was a really fascinating conversation because Kevin didn't really talk about NFTs that much. It was more just around, I think they talked about some of his other projects, the zero fasting apps, and just sort of just shooting the breeze, really. And I've heard Kevin mention this with JCal, and I'm pretty sure I've heard him mention it in another interview, but this would be my wild speculation that, and I don't know how it necessarily comes together, but Kevin always talks about when Dogecoin came out and how he was using it as like, this internet tipping sort of thing, and it was fun and it was this and that. And he's always talked about, commerce on the internet and like micropayments to content creators and things like that. I don't know how this necessarily maps together, but I believe he's going to try to build some type of like economy around this. Now, whether that means, coming for digital experiences and like tipping a little bit of this proof coin or whatever it is, I don't know. But I do feel like maybe micropayments are going to be some part of this equation. But I'm driven purely off speculation here. I'm just throwing mud at the wall and seeing what might stick.
Yeah, it would have to then be on a layer 2 or a different layer 1 than Ethereum. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think they said that the talk of that is still a while away. So we'll just have to wait.
Q1 2023, but it was worded, I think, let me just bring this wording up because we know it's all the devil's in the detail. It was, we'll have more to share in the coming months, but expect a larger unveiling in Q1 2023. So I read that as the coin might not necessarily be in Q1 2023, but we might have an announcement of when it is. And to be honest, as a Proof and Moonbirds holder, I'm okay with this being delayed for as long as possible.
For sure.
Because
there's no
I
point
don't
in
think
dropping
there's no
anything
point.
in this market.
No, and I was quite worried actually. I said it to a friend of mine in Proof earlier in the week before the announcement, and he was like, I think they're going to drop the Proof coin. And I said, I hope not. I hope not. But okay. So that's a fair bit on future proof. Should we?
Yeah, that's
segue?
half an hour.
Yeah.
Well, let's just finish with there was the Grails reveal last week.
Yes.
Just after your talk, I think. Just give us a quick update on. I know Snow Froze one was probably the most popular.
Yep.
That might have the highest floor. But let us know which were the most popular and how it went and what you did, because I know you sold your pass.
I did. I sold for 3.35 ETH, my Mint Pass. It was, I got to say, it was pretty consistent over the period where the Mint Pass was available for secondary sales. It sort of, I think when it first dropped, it went to about 4.1, and then it sat around sort of 3.5 pretty much for a couple of weeks, and it sort of dropped a little bit below, a little bit higher. In terms of, so look, I didn't pay as much attention, obviously, when you don't have as much skin in the game. I did say, I think on our pod last week when I was recording by myself, that I quite liked number 16, which was almost like this ball rolling downhill. It looked like it was an animated type of piece of art. Grail number 16. That ended up being by an artist that I've got to be perfectly frank, I'd never heard of, Jake Fried.
It seemed to be a lot of more very new artists in there as well.
There were a mix of new artists. I mean, some of the more notables, I'm not sure how much our listeners sort of get into the art side. I'm sure there's a few that pay attention, but we had Tom Sachs from Tom Sachs Rocket Factory project, and obviously a well-known artist in certain circles as well. Coldy. So Coldy was actually number 4. We also had...
But his was more a trick one, and people had figured it out as well.
Yes.
I did like all the detective work that was going into it.
It is a lot of fun, I got to admit. I did sort of jump into a few conversations in Discord, even though I wasn't minting one on this particular Grails. But it is fun for, and some people nail it, right? But then other people are completely off. And it does throw you because I'm even looking at Grail number 21. When I first saw that hit the website, I thought that was going to be Josie Bellini from, Cyber Brokers and a great crypto artist, in general, and that ended up being an artist. Again, I hadn't heard of this artist named Oshinachi or Osinachi, something like that, and that was the. You also had Snowfro. You mentioned Justin Avasano from Twin Flames and from Quantum. So on the photography side. Drifter Shoots was number 13. Drifter Shoots was pretty easy to recognize. I mean, that was one where it went up and most people went, that's Drift straight off the bat. Pussy Riot was in there as well. And then what else did I miss? That's probably some of the more notables. In terms of, what was going for what prices, I did see a couple of Snowfro's pieces going for somewhere in the vicinity of about 15 to 20 ETH, within that sort of first 24 hours. But I've got to say, having gone through 2 Grails now, I was definitely involved more in Grails 1 in terms of sort of timing when you might enter or might exit. There's generally a big couple of sales in the first 24 hours of the more notable artists. So, if you were looking to pick something up, probably the game plan is to maybe wait a few days from the more notable artists. But I think the floor for some of the lesser known artists and the higher quantity pieces that were minted dropped to about 0.75, 0.8. And to put it in perspective, Grails 1, and obviously that was in a much different market in March, that probably sat around the sort of 1.5 to 2.5 ETH mark for quite a consistent period of time, and even ran up as high as sort of 3 and 4. But I wouldn't expect we see a floor of much higher than 1 ETH. I should say, much higher than 1 ETH, I
think we're going to see a lot of diminishing returns on these future Grails as well. It's just, we've seen it many times. So Nifty Gateway, I remember during the buzz, everything would sell out, prices would go nuts. Now it's almost a ghost town there. There are drops daily, but barely anything gets minted. So I can see the next Grails is going to be a real test of how the market feels about it. I'm going to assume the Grails ticket is going to go for a lot less than the 4 to 3 ETH that it was for this one. It might be between 1.5 and 2. And then what's going to happen after the next, you said all up they're going to have 10. So it'll be an interesting 3 a year or something.
3 Grails a year. The other events will be sort of
they'll have sales and stuff.
Yeah, they'll be more like collaborations, like the Heart U one they had in January, where it might be an established artist, it might be a new artist, but it's not always going to be 1,000 either. There'll be some projects that'll be like 50 pieces, and as a collective member, you'll go into a raffle, and if you're one of the 50, you get to mint.
Yeah, but there's only so many well-known artists in this space. But I'm sure Kevin will play around with the mechanics of the next one and say, he might even say, there is a B-pool in this one. There is an X copy, but you have to find it, and so on. So, all right, we've talked so much about it. Seems like, fair enough, this is the Ape and Bird show. So we do talk a lot about Bored Apes and a lot about Moonbirds. And we're not going to do anything different, because let's move on to the Bored Ape section. So we saw this week Snoop and Eminem pretty much sit down while they watch a clip of themselves at the VMA Awards. Have you watched the video?
I watched the video. Big Snoop and Eminem fan growing up, so how could I not watch it? Yeah, I did.
What did you think of it?
Look, I thought it was cool. I know that some people knocked it, some people loved it. Sort of a standard reaction, isn't it? It's all, you're always going to have some people that liked or hated it. I mean, I haven't watched the VMAs probably since Britney and Madonna made out.
Yep.
So shout out to that particular VMAs, whenever that was, probably 10 or 15 years ago. But yeah, look, I watched the clip. I think it's cool. I mean, obviously both are holders. I saw Snoop at VCon in person in May. I was incredibly surprised by his depth of knowledge of the Web3 space, and his manager as well. I don't think, look, we don't know what deals have been done in the, behind the scenes with the Gaio series of the world or whatever, but my feeling, particularly on Snoop, is, and even seeing him at Ape Fest in June, is he loves the Bored Ape brand, right? He's
enamored by his ape.
Yeah, and he's called his ape Dr. Bombay. He's spun out, merchandise. They had an ice cream truck at Ape Fest called Dr. Bombay. There's genuine vibes I get from Snoop in terms of loving the Bored Ape ecosystem. And look, I saw lots of tweets the other day, and many of these people probably a little bit younger than us that was sort of saying, Snoop's yesteryear's hero, sort of why do we keep going back to the well on Snoop and Eminem and da-da-da-da-da. But, I mean, is it necessarily a bad thing for the brand, do you think, for Bored Apes? I saw Daniel had a suggestion that, they shouldn't be... He loves Snoop and Eminem as well, but said, they need to be getting some younger talent in to collab.
The question I would love to know is the metrics on owners. The thing is, old people like me, I'm in my 40s, we have disposable income to spend. I know a lot of young kids probably made an absolute mint during the NFT craze of 21, but I think you will see that this actual demographic skews a bit older, of the sort of IT guys that made a bit of money, startups and working for Google and so on. And we've seen that with Moonbirds in particular. So I would say the average age of this space of holding tier 1 projects is well over 30, maybe even 33 to 35 as an average. And look, Eminem, Snoop Dogg, when we were teenagers, they were the biggest things going. So, of course, it sort of links together. I thought the clip was fine. Apparently what I read was that it was all done in the Improbable engine. Fair enough, the copy of Eminem and Snoop did look like the graphics from a PS2 game. But it was a bit of fun, and the Bored Apes looked cool. And, of course, these things will improve. So I didn't mind it. The other thing that we did see today was a video launched by Otherdeeds. And I thought that was very high quality. And it had a lot to do with the coders. But then, of course, they said more in Q4, which Bored Apes are great at doing. But Q4 is pretty much December 31st, like I told you. We always wait to the last minute for any sort of Bored Ape announcements. So that'll be another interesting one. They'll drop a few more little hints. I'm still waiting. I've got a lot of lands and had never ticked off the first obelisk or whatever it is. So I'm waiting for another chance to at least watch or test Otherdeeds so I can tick off all my lands. But this was another case. I think we went back to it before. They've got now 70 plus employees, close to, well over $500 million in funding. And they're very quiet at the moment. So you assume they're building very hard. And it's just a matter of time before they release some more cool stuff. I'm sure their land and Otherdeeds is one project of probably 20 they're currently working on. So another wait and see. And again, there's no point in dropping anything at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, I really liked the video, and it gave me vibes and memories of the initial Other Side video, which was just incredible. And I think we were all sort of riding that euphoric wave still in. That dropped around
Those are
about
the
my
days.
birthday in March, actually, and I remember watching. I was like, "This is awesome!" And you had Moonbirds coming up. They were exciting times back in.
I was so lucky I didn't KYC more accounts because based on that video, based on just the whole sentiment, I told you I was going in big on lands. I went in fairly large, but not as large as I was hoping to, and that saved me a lot. But then I did again buy more lands when Elon posted about owning gold apes. So I'm deep into Otherdeeds. But luckily I can hold for a decade, and I'm sure in the next few years they will do well.
Absolutely. I still have one in the chamber, Otherdeeds. So, and that is
So what you need.
Yep, that is a what do they call the sentiment or the sentiment? I should say.
Yeah.
Of,
Do you have a mutant one or a main?
Got the main one. Yeah.
Nice.
Yes.
I don't know what it's called, but yeah.
Yeah.
Did you? Where's your location on the map?
It's not super close to the center, no, because my token ID. Remember the token ID.
Which was another ridiculous issue.
That was in the 8,000s, so not close.
Okay, you're near the second.
But I don't have a coda, but I have my artifact.
Whale farts.
Coda farts.
Coda farts.
I have a jar of coda farts on my land, so come and get it. Offers of 80 ETH plus, please, and will be accepted overnight.
All right, let's move on to other things that happened this week. Well, I think this happened last week. We had X2Y2 talk about, well, they had an update to the site where now you can choose to pay royalties if you want. So what are your thoughts on X2Y2? Do you even know who they are?
No, I feel like X2Y2 popped up around either the time Looks Rare popped up or shortly,
maybe a month or two after.
Shortly after. And, I got involved a bit with Looks Rare. I thought that was interesting. And, having done the targets and things like that you had to do with OpenSea, I had a little bit of skin in the game there. X2Y2, I've never used it, but I did see a lot of negative sentiment popping up in the last week around it. And I think I told you just before we went on air, Steve, that I was noticing the Bored Ape bot was actually starting to do a little bit of volume through the platform. Like very rarely do I ever see any Bored Ape sales going through there. Occasionally Looks Rare, and obviously a lot of OpenSea action. But look, I think you referenced a Beeple tweet 2 weeks ago when we were speaking about this, saying that ultimately you need to foster a community of collectors that are going to be willing to sort of pay royalties. Now, I think I took the artist side when we were chatting a few weeks ago and said, I completely understand this premise and this sort of excitement around having royalties built in perpetuity was a big factor in sort of kickstarting this whole NFT craze and wave. But I think sort of like voluntary taxes, to me, is never going to be a sustainable, method. Like, of course, you're going to get people that are your collectors if you're an artist that will be happy to pay it. But if we're relying on volunteering without trying to make the tech a little bit more airtight, I don't know how sustainable that is. What are your thoughts?
I don't know, because I don't know who mentioned it, but someone compared it to tipping in America.
Yep.
And it's just a social norm there. So whenever I travel there, I get really pissed off because I'm like, what do you mean this isn't the final price? I've got to give you 20% on top of this for you serving water, and you're not even nice to me, or whatever it is. So their culture, it's you do it and everybody does it. Maybe there's a few people that don't, and they'll be shunned by society. So I can see how that can sort of happen as well. And the beauty of it being on chain, you can see that this user doesn't tip and so on. So I don't know. I think there will be an in-between. One thing we're doing, so at NFTeams, been thinking about this. Like, there are things you could do that are negative to people who don't pay royalties. So I could, because it's on the blockchain, I can see if someone's bought and not paid royalties. I could easily just not give them utility in the upcoming game, or not allow them to play any of the current tournaments, or put some type of handicap on that NFT. That's a terrible thing to do, and it would just be detrimental long term. But what we're doing, we're teaming up with a new platform, and they're going to sort of work to pretty much, I can put my own platform on my site, even though it's using their site. And then I have control over my royalty percentage. It's very easy for users to then just stay on our site and trade. So we've got jerseys coming up. We're going to have 0% royalty, and the platform's going to give 0%. So everything's going to be free to trade. And then we'll put our players on there, and it might be a very low, like SudoSwap has 0.025. I think this platform, we've agreed at 0.75%, and then that goes down the more volume you have. But I can see a lot more projects just having their own buying and selling platform on their site, which gets used the most. And then we could even offer incentives to use that platform, whereas you could get a token if you're using our platform, and that goes into the game and so on. So there will be a lot of roundabout ways of figuring this out, I think.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think it's a fascinating discussion. So yeah, I will continue probably not to use X2Y2, but
I never even claimed their airdrop. I've never been to the site.
Yeah. Let's move on. Another bit of a random one. I'm not sure if you've been involved with this one, Steve, but your favorite chain again, Solana DeGods. I'm assuming you do not have a DeGod, but did you apply also? And I think I'm going to butcher how to pronounce this. I know a few people that did get have a successful application, but do we say Utes? What's the...
See, I assume it's Utes, but if we're going off the CC0, it could be Y00TS. I'm going to assume Utes, but I've never listened to, I think it's Frank DeGods, who is the main guy. I really should just listen to one of his interviews, and I'm sure he would mention the name, but I'm sticking with Utes. But yeah, an interesting one. This shows, so DeGods was this fairly early Solana project, but it died, and then they decided to make all DeGods beautiful or something like that. So they released, you could convert your current one into something else. That sort of kicked off some people enjoying it again. And in the last month or so, it became one of the top 5 projects in the space, so based on floor price. So I think it's about, correct me if I'm wrong, 700 Solana is the floor, and I think Solana is about $30 or $40, so it's $20,000 or thereabouts floor price. But these guys are fantastic marketers. So what we're seeing now is all the old stuff doesn't work anymore. Whitelist, who cares? Like games and stuff around it, doesn't matter. They've tried something really new, and it seems to be working and getting everyone excited. And of course, their other project rising in value massively has all come together at this moment to make it a very, very popular mint. And the way they do it, when you have to apply, pretty much you're applying for a whitelist. You're going to get a mint token or whatever. But then they announce it, you get to retweet it to your complete followers. So it's a sort of almost a refer a friend program. They're using some great Web 2 tactics, but we're going to see this. So all the other projects now are going to try to copy this idea. One or two, it might work, and then it will die off. But we're going to have to figure out new marketing tactics, and it's probably my most difficult job going forward. Once we've got the players ready, then it will be months of strategizing how we market to get some hype going and get these players sold. But yeah, they've done a fantastic job. I saw some really big names, and I always wonder, are they just tweeting random big Twitter accounts? Because I saw Wayne Rooney.
I saw Allen Iverson, my childhood basketball hero.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if they're actually applying, or there's just more great marketing from the team. But it's going really big. So the sale of that and how it prices out over the coming weeks will be very interesting to watch.
So I'm not 100% crystal clear on this, but did I see or hear that their Twitter account actually got taken down or temporarily suspended?
So, yeah, I logged onto Twitter maybe 2 days ago, and the whole ecosystem was suspended. So the Utes whitelist, DeGods, like all their main accounts. What I read, who knows, was that they may have had Twitter integrations on their site. So when you apply, it then sort of lets you click a button to tweet out. And we had this issue with NFTeams. On our site, we let you create your own Gary V at the time. So you could make your own Gary V character and then click to tweet it, and it had a predefined word saying NFTeams, Gary V, blah, 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 with the image. That sort of triggered Twitter's bot thing. So we've been sort of shadow banned for a long time, the NFTeams account. But because Utes and DeGods were so big, and there would have been tens of thousands, I guess Twitter just in their bot just said, all right, you have to shut them down. So they've had to make new accounts because I guess they don't have contacts at Twitter that can quickly get these back up. So yeah, it was very interesting to see. And of course, even better marketing. Twitter shut us down. So they'll be able to grow from that as well. It just seems like everything they do, even when it's not their fault, they're like coming out lucky.
Yeah, 100%. Well, while we're on NFTeams, massive announcement I saw earlier this week. You've inked a deal or partnered with Immutable. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I guess you can say partnered. We're one of 6 teams that were selected out of a few hundred entries to their mentoring program. So this is a 8 to 12 week program that they've put on. It's their first ever one. And they're trying to help teams to pretty much build a product. So we've got every week, there's a new topic that we talk about with guys from Gods Unchained and all these Immutable X projects. So all the leads from there come on, listen to us, try to talk us through how best to build a narrative, do tokenomics, actually build a game, how to grow community, marketing, and all this sort of stuff. And then we have a weekly get-together of the 6 projects as well, and we're all very similar. We're all building very similar things, so there's a lot of crossover. So yeah, it's just, and of course they want us to build on Immutable. So as we know, building a single, like a 10K NFT project on Ethereum, that's fine. It is expensive, a lot cheaper now, but it's still expensive. And if you've got a game and you've got assets in the game, you just can't have them on a layer 1. So a layer 2 makes sense. And you've got Immutable, which is trying to become the game's layer 2. Yep. Then you've got Polygon, which is probably the biggest layer 2 out there. But yeah, so it's probably a month in. And then at the end, we get to pitch to, they had raised a $500 million funding round that's meant to go to games and that. So we get to pitch in front of a lot. Not that we're taking on funding or anything, but it just helps build out. I've never built out a pitch deck because I'm not trying to raise. So I get asked all the time, oh, please send you a pitch deck and how much you're looking for. I'm like, no, we're not raising at the moment, so there is no pitch deck, but I can tell you what we're doing, sort of thing. But it's interesting. So it's helpful, and any sort of help we can get as we keep going in this market and those sort of partnerships, I'll take. So there are some other, I can't mention other stuff. Once that happens, if that happens, we can talk about that. That is much bigger than that and much cooler, but I'm really happy with the program and the guys running it, fantastic, and Aussie company as well. So just really happy to be part of it.
I was going to say, I mean, the awesome connection of just having, I mean, I've been to the Immutable office a few times in the last few months. It's the old Facebook Australia HQ. And it is cool to see, you know, a project like you with NFTeams being an Aussie founded project, sort of partnering with, you know, a big behemoth in the space that happens to be founded by two Aussies as well is a really cool thing. So congratulations on that. We also saw you tweet, or NFTeams, I should say, Twitter account tweet about you've got a new community panel. Can you tell us a little bit about what that entails and who those people are?
Yeah, so I just found out the other day who they were. So what we have, I guess this can sort of go back to the DAO idea and everything as well. When we sold NFTeams, 450 ETH went into a community fund for prizes to go back to everyone and for the community to use it in certain ways. Initially, it was, like I mentioned at the start, people just coming up with ideas and telling me and me trying to reply to them all. And it just wasn't possible to reply to, at the time, probably 20 messages a day with ideas of what to do. So in, I think, February, we put the first panel together and we tried to make it diverse. So you had whales, female, international, and so on. Lots of people in the ecosystem. And we had 5 or 6 members. And the idea was they were the figurehead. So if you had an idea, you went to the panel first, talked it over. And if they thought it was a good enough idea and they could write a plan, then they talked to me every 2 weeks and said, all right, this is the idea or whatever. And we would action votes or actually just do what was requested. So those first guys have been fantastic. Initially, they had voted that it would be every 3 months that it would turn over, but then they realized, well, they just getting started after 3 months, learning the ins and out. So then it moved to 6 months. So that 6 months is now up. And now the next fresh breed, and they are all fairly well-known community members. So yeah, just a new breath of fresh air into the panel, and I'll meet with them every 2 weeks. And yeah, it's just to get feedback. I also share what we're working on, get feedback that way. So it's both push and pull. And yeah, it's just a good way to still understand, if I don't always have the time to go into Discord, what's going on, what people are wanting, the general sentiment. And yeah, it seems to be working well.
Excellent. Great to hear. Let's move to CloneX. You are a holder. I am not.
Yep.
Tell us about forging.
Okay, so as we know, CloneX owned by Nike, and they've come out with their, I guess, Nike gear. So you've got shirts, socks, hats. Of course, the big one is the shoes. Nike's most famous for shoes. So the CloneXs, they have DNA. So you've got humans, robots, reptiles, aliens, Murakami drip, all these different ones. So I think there's about 8 different shoes that are coming out. It's very expensive, 0.38 ETH, which is about $650 for a pair of, what are they called? Nike Air Ones or Air Force Ones?
Yeah, Air Force Ones is definitely a very famous
So
one.
I had a look at the lowest price for an Air Force One, and in Australia it's about $150. So there is a huge premium on these shoes. Of course, they're doing the thing. They've already had a hoodie sale, and they've got the RFID token in all this gear, and it will link back to the NFT. But they have been taking a lot of money out of the ecosystem. So if they do a very similar drop again in the next few months, I don't think the community is going to be too happy. Personally, I think I have about 8 Clone X's, but I have 2 Murakami drips. So I'll be getting all 4. You can get 2 of each thing for each clone that you have. So I'll be getting 4 of the shoes and maybe some of the other Murakami gear. But if you look at the floor price of all the others. They're very close to the mint price, and we've got another 5 days. So I can see a lot of the other gear going below mint. But personally, I'll take the Murakami stuff and just... I've had to build a big storage facility just over there that has got... It's already chock-a-block with all the merch that I've got from Bored Ape, Mutant Ape, Clone X, all this stuff that I'm never going to wear. This is probably the only hoodie I wear. But those shoes, I think, especially the Murakami ones and some of the other rare ones, I had a look at StockX. I'm not a shoe guy, but I do see these as sort of a grail item. So in a decade, once everyone's wearing NFT-linked shoes, these will be looked back at as the grail, and 0.38 ETH will seem like the craziest deal ever. I've already bought shoes.
Not financial advice, obviously.
Not financial advice, blah, 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 blah. But I have, Artifact had released very early NFTs, and they were these Space Drip, they were called. And they had worked with a lot of artists, and I had bought a few of those. So I was able to forge some shoes which are before this drop. So they might be even more grail, even though they're not famous artists. They're fairly well-known artists. So yeah, I'll have all these shoes I'll never wear, just in this little storage area. But it is an interesting one. I think I saw a tweet where Nike is just so far ahead of how much money it's taken in this space. It was close to 200 mil. With this sale, you're probably looking at $300 million that they've taken out of the NFT ecosystem. The fact that they bought Artifact for, I've heard, $100 million makes this probably one of the greatest acquisitions they've ever done. If after 6 months of getting them, they're already made 3 times and own the company, just incredible. And this is in a bear market as well. But the hope from my end with Clone X is that they don't just keep dropping merch and expect the community to pay. So there was a free shirt. Everyone could claim one free shirt, which is just their basic one. But if you remember, we got the box that took a couple of months to crack open. Yep. And in those boxes were different shoes as well with the little vials. So there's going to be another thing for them to sell. It's a tough one. You do worry, and we go back to the Moonbirds and the saturation of all these NFTs saturating the market. Is the space ready for it? I'm not so sure. Again, wait and see. I'm happy to get my cool shoes, and I think in 10 years I'll be very happy I bought these ones. But it really is dependent on the guys behind Artifact and Nike figuring out the supply-demand issue.
We will wait and see on that one.
That should be our catchphrase. We should just change to wait and see.
Wait and see show. Well, let's actually quickly touch on the A16Z. We've mentioned them a little bit already today with their injection into the Proof and Moonbirds ecosystem. They announced, I think it was only yesterday, and I haven't read the full article yet, but it's on the A16Z crypto website, which is a really good, useful tool. So if you haven't checked that site out before, there's some great materials and resources. But they've launched this Can't Be Evil NFT license, Steve. Did you happen to take a look through it, and what were your key takeaways?
Yeah, so this is, of course, a play on Google's old slogan of "Don't be evil." We know that really didn't hold up over the past couple of decades, but "Can't Be Evil" is quite clever because, of course, we talk about smart contracts and immutable code, all this sort of stuff. I also just read the article, didn't look into the thing, but of course, we've talked about this CC0 debate, and this is a cleaner. I guess they're trying to create a standard that NFT projects can link to tell their users exactly how they can use their NFTs. So we have Creative Commons licenses, and there's all these different ones. that you can refer to, and that's what the NFT community has been linking to. So they're trying to make Creative Commons for the NFT space. Another person who came out with an article probably 2 weeks ago, I think, Tim Ferriss, who, because of Kevin Rose, has probably been dipping his toes, and I guess Kevin just won't shut up about NFTs to him when they talk, but he came out with his own sort of ethics policy, and this was around the team that created the NFT, and I'm sure Kevin and him probably had a talk about Ryan Carson and everything that happened there. So he came out with an ethics policy that pretty much at NFTeams we're doing already. So we don't trade on any information. If I tell anyone anything, they're not allowed to share it or trade on it. But he had a very simple lawyer policy written up. Personally, I copied it and pasted it into the NFTeams.club website. So if you go to our footer, you'll be able to click on our ethics policy and see it. So there's all these little legal things being added, which is needed. So yeah, just another brick in the wall of building out this ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it's a really good resource. I mean, it's just sort of some guardrails and a bit of a template really to follow, isn't it? If you're a project founder, or if you're wanting to be a project founder, or even for artists, just different ways to think about what type of licenses you want to issue around your NFTs.
Yeah, and look, personally, I don't want to go spend $5,000 on a lawyer to write this up myself when there is an open standard out there.
Yeah.
The other thing we saw, we're very close to the end of the show, we saw the OpenSea thread. So we've got the merge coming up in 14 days, exciting times. OpenSea came out with a tweet talking about the merge. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, I think we touched on this a few weeks ago, Steve, just around, we're obviously seeing some things pop up on Twitter and people saying, well, is the proof of work Ethereum chain still going to sort of exist, and how sort of maybe older collections will be treated and things like that. So ultimately, the TLDR on this OpenSea Twitter thread are titled "The Merge is Coming." OpenSea emphatically state, first and most importantly, we are committed to solely supporting NFTs on the upgraded Ethereum proof of stake chain. So I think they did need to come out and say this. I mean, for most people, it was quite obvious, but there has been a lot of rumor mill floating around. Yeah.
Well, you already know what X2, Y2 will probably do. Whatever way they can make money, they'll have both platforms, a proof of stake and a proof of work. But yeah, I think we mentioned this 2 weeks ago. You're going to have a very high likelihood that proof of work miners, there'll be a lot of them that their machinery becomes worthless unless they're running this network. So it's very likely a lot will continue to try to run a network, and we've seen Ethereum Classic. So then we'll have Ethereum, I don't know, POW. The best thing, I've done it with every Bitcoin thing. There was Bitcoin Cash, there was Bitcoin Gold, Diamond, Silver. As soon as I get the token, I sell it back for the original asset. Now, if there is a market for the old proof of work chain, I probably won't sell the NFTs on there, but I will sell any Ethereum and convert it. But yeah, good for OpenSea to come out. I think there have been a couple of other brands. I think even Bored Apes said they're supporting proof of stake.
Kevin said it with Moonbirds as well.
Yeah, so it's just, be very careful. Just don't do anything. There is a chance that if you sell one on one chain, it can be replicated across. So it'll be a very interesting time. Any sale you make, just make sure the replica on the other chain is maybe in a different wallet or something like that.
Absolutely. So I think the last thing we were just going to touch on very, very briefly was Ticketmaster. There was an announcement with Ticketmaster and Dapper Labs about 48 hours ago, talking about ticketing to sporting events, concerts, etc. we understand, Steve, that this is not necessarily all tickets moving to be an NFT, but rather a complementary NFT of a traditional ticket. Is that your way you understood this?
Yeah, look, I saw the headline and maybe read a couple of paragraphs, but I think even show one, we were talking about all the future use cases, and ticketing was a very common one that we always went back to. So eventually, I believe Ticketmaster are dipping their toes, seeing how it works, testing out a platform. I always worry about flow, or we mentioned with the merge. Well, I didn't mention, but if the merge goes well, this will sort of spell the end for a lot of other layer ones, and I can see layer twos growing while those layer ones slowly die away. So it is a worry that they always go with all these other companies, but of course the incentives are there from these other companies to use them. But from what I read, it's not actually tickets that you can show your wallet, log in, and there's a barcode. It's actually just, you have this Ticketmaster ticket. If you scan the barcode, here's a free NFT that goes along with the ticket to remind you that you went to the event. I think you mentioned that there was a Super Bowl integration, but I read that there was at least 5 million NFTs already created through this Ticketmaster Dapper Labs combination. So it's a start. They're dipping their toes. And look, it's foregone that ticketing will be NFTs. It's just a perfect match. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I think it's good. It's obviously, I don't think mainstream adoption it's not there yet, right? So to sort of force people to use, a ticket to actually gain entry into, say, a sporting event or concert that, really only maybe 2 to 5% of all attendees are probably going to even have a clue of what an NFT ticket does. For me, I've used token proof to get into, Madonna and these type of events, and it's going to be quite easy when this technology catches up for me, but I'm deep in the weeds, right? We're not quite there for everyone yet. So I like this sort of just experimentation around here's the option to grab your ticket as an NFT, because as I keep speaking about, I love the idea, and we keep seeing, Facebook or Meta talking about, integration. We know this is going to come more around our online galleries and just our social media, and we will be curating what we care about. And, for someone that is going to be, the GP they attended, or the, Taylor Swift concert, probably in your case, Steve, the Taylor Swift concert. So, I'm excited by this. I think it's really good. I did want to just backtrack when you were saying around Ethereum and the layer twos and other layer ones potentially sort of retracting a little bit. Are you talking about from an ESG perspective, like an environmental perspective, with Ethereum moving to proof of stake? Is that where you were coming from in terms of that?
Well, that's one part of it, but pretty much all these other layer ones, their whole defense has been, well, we're proof of stake and we have all these advantages over proof of work, ESG being one of them, but transaction costs, and of course this merge isn't going to change any pricing or transaction costs. That will come in the future. But their whole defense against we're better than ETH has been proof of stake, and that this just takes that away. So unless they have a new attack vector, I guess, on Ethereum, I can see a lot of these companies are just going to bleed out, where people will slowly migrate whatever projects are on these current L1s to Ethereum, and you're going to have Bitcoin as proof of work, Ethereum as proof of stake. That's it. And then, of course, on top of Bitcoin, you've got Lightning and other L2s. On top of Ethereum, you're going to have Immutable, Polygon, hundreds of L2s, of course, and there'll probably be very specific L2s. Let's say IMX is gaming, there might be a music one, and so on. And yeah, there is no use for all these other layer ones. Unless you want to speculate and maybe 100x on a token, of course. But yeah, that's just me. I'm a bit of a maxi. I'm sure there is a use case, but that's just my point of view on how this merge is going to have a huge impact on the entire crypto space.
Yeah, I'm personally fascinated by how this is going to play out. I definitely have bigger bags of Ethereum than other chains with NFTs, but I certainly probably see a multi-chain world, but I still feel like I'm more bullish on Ethereum than the other ones, just particularly when you think about from a social construct perspective and, with how Bitcoin's got, like we know Vitalik is, sort of the figurehead of Ethereum, but the way that both of these chains were spun up and the way that they operate, it is in that decentralized fashion. And, we often hear people talk about Ethereum as like the world's computer.
Yep.
There's this sort of, someone might call me out and say that I'm missing some type of fact here, but there's more incentives and there's more VC funding with these other chains, right? So the incentives are just different. So, I think it's going to be really good timing for Ethereum. I actually presented, well, we can end with this, Steve, but I presented in Sydney on Wednesday to the Marketing Academy at CommBank. You had 30 to 35 marketers from brands like, I think there was Woolworths in the room, Coca-Cola, McGrath Foundation Charity. You had bunch of agencies. You had some big brands there, and there were everyone from CMOs to sort of marketing managers, etc. And the room was really responsive, to be honest. I thought I was going to be playing a little bit of defense in terms of trying to fly the flag for NFTs and Web3. There's just still a lot of confusion, but we actually had a presentation earlier in the day. I sat around for some of the other presenters, and there was a big one on ESG. And so it was really good that I was able to address the fact that, Ethereum in the next few weeks, and I've got to say, the eyes are lighting up. Some of them actually knew that already, but some of their eyes lit up because the rubber stamp they're looking for internally just is not been available when they've wanted to use Ethereum. So I do agree with you that I think it's going to be a very interesting time, especially when we see traditional brands coming into the space, because no longer is that sort of an issue where previously it's been, one of the biggest pushbacks that I see for brands is ESG and scams, and now we're just going to be scams.
Yeah, exactly. And the media loves to bring up ESG. I think in the last few months, we've seen that there's a lot of now media articles talking about how ESG seems to be a net negative. But of course, now Ethereum doesn't have to worry about that. But I think 2023 is going to be a year where all these brands that you mentioned, Woolies, CommBank, other shops and that, they're going to start really either outsourcing or having internal teams talking about NFTs and how to integrate it into all their products. And then 2024 is probably when we see them just all come out with these NFTs linked to their products. And that's when the next big wave will probably get onboarded.
Yeah. One last shout out, our friends GT Soul and Jane Louise.
Yep.
They had their first ever gallery expo or event at their new gallery called Oshi Gallery in Collingwood in Melbourne. So that's on Smith Street.
Looks so cool.
Yeah, I've got to say, I popped down there 2 or 3 weeks ago. GT and Jane are actually, not only are they builders in the crypto space, but they're actual real builders, and they built this thing with their bare hands, blood, sweat, and tears. I saw them a couple of weeks ago. It's been an incredible feat of what they've done. And not only that, I was in an Uber to the event yesterday, and I was sort of getting my bearings. I didn't have my Google Maps out. And this massive X-copy mural of the right-click and save as guy just hit me in the face. Now, when I went down there a few weeks ago, the X-copy mural wasn't there. It looks phenomenal. And I'm not just saying that to pump GT and Jane up. It is one of the best murals in Melbourne, and no one knows about it yet, but they will after today because we have a huge audience at the Ape and Bird NFT show. But I wanted to say massive shout out, and that X-copy mural looks incredible, but so does the inside of the gallery, and I'm sure there'll be many, many NFT events that are held there over the coming years.
But what an amazing use of CC0 as well. X-copy went CC0, completely legal for them to do that, and that's what he wants. But yeah, those two are great builders and advocates of the space. So hopefully when you're running the next conference, it's going to be in Melbourne, right? will also be dropping in there. Maybe we can do a live podcast with them.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Maybe a future NFTeams event there. Who knows, right?
Yep, 100%.
Well, thank you for another show, Steve. We should preface too that nothing you've heard today is financial advice. This show is for informational and
we're idiots.
Educational purposes only. Thank you for joining us on episode 17. We will be back next week, and we'll see you then.
See you later.